Okay, looks like folks are joining. This is great. And I believe the other session is up and running. I'll check the Q&A. If anybody's here that thinks that they should be in the other session, please let me know. And we'll see what we can do about that, trying to juggle admin plus other stuff. So hopefully we can get people where they need to go in the next minute or two. But this is the intro to Slack session for the general session, and we'll give it about a minute for people to come on in. While we're doing that, I'm just going to double check the end time. Okay, so we need to be wrapped up in about 40 minutes. That's good. So we've got a couple Q&As here. Let me just check that really quick. So as far as being on your own computer, I don't think so. I'm gonna basically have Slack up on my computer and run through some basic setup and kind of intro level features and stuff like that, and just go over it. You can definitely follow along if you want, but I think for the most part, just watching, and we'll make this much more interactive. So I'll talk about a feature of Slack, and then if folks want to put questions in, we'll kind of take breaks to answer questions along the way, and such. But yeah, I don't think you need to have it open. Let me just say, yeah, I'm tracking what you're saying, Amber. So, were you able to look in the session on the session screen and filter by track? And while you're doing that, if everyone just hang on just 1 second, I'm going to do some quick admin things here. Amber, if you're listening, I resent the invitation specifically for that ticket, and I'm pasting a copy of the link right here in the Q&A, which will go privately to you. And that's let me know how that works out. That should be all you need. So it should check your email, and that should have come again to the email, and or you can try using that link. But it's going to have you go through. It may have you go through another registration. I see that there are other people in the other track, so I know that it's working technically. So give that a shot. Okay. Thank you so much. All right, folks. Let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Awesome. And okay, so sharing the screen for Slack. So this is what so typically, so just real quick orientation. So Slack, for those who don't know, for the most part, it's just a messaging application that has become very, very common for use in the workplace. There are other like kind of private social uses for it as well, but where it's really gained a ton of traction is in the workplace. And so typically what you'll find at an employer is that after you've gotten oriented and onboarded to the company, they're going to invite you to, sign up for a bunch of different applications. And one of them is more than likely going to be Slack or something very similar to it. And it's become a real mainstay for corporate internal communications. So it's not something that you would use really at all. There are some use cases for it, but usually not at all for external communications. So whereas with email, you're doing that both for internal and external communications, with Slack, it's really primarily internal communication. So communicating with someone on your team, someone in your department, someone in another department, all within your own company. And so because of that, you are going to get an invite for Slack from the company itself. So that's the way this usually starts. So Olivia and I created kind of a setup company for demoing this. And so it all started by me going to my email and accepting an invitation to join the Slack workplace for this company. And so what you're seeing on the screen right now is the first thing that showed up with me clicking on the button from my email saying, do you want to accept this invitation? I said yes. And then it basically takes me to this screen here. And so just a little bit more about Slack before we dive completely into the features. I think you'll agree that it's very different than email. So when you think about conversations and communications within a company or within a group of people, email is definitely one way to do it, but email was a definite advantage over sending letters, writing things on paper and pushing papers around the office. But email even now really feels very kind of overly formal in many respects for communication, because we're also used to using our phones now for messaging, and I've been messaging people throughout the conference for various things, including admissions and stuff like that. But we use messaging all the time, right? There's a chat with Zoom. There's messaging on our phones. We've all become very accustomed to communicating in acronyms and shortened forms of sentences and emojis in ways that can really, they honestly make us more efficient. And maybe that's slightly dangerous, but it makes us much more efficient to not have to be so formal and verbose as we are in email. So I guess that's where we really have noticed a big difference in this communication style, and where Slack has really picked up on that in the workplace. And I think it was not completely easy for them to get into the workplace, simply because the workplace tends to be a place where you would have more formal communication, but more and more so we're seeing less formal communication. But it's still quite effective, but it's much more appropriate and accepted now. So when I was at 23andMe, Slack, the founder of Slack, came by in the early stages, and they were trying to get us to adopt Slack at 23andMe to be one of the first, kind of bigger corporate accounts that they had. And I remember watching this presentation, and I was just thinking, oh man, this is just email, but in a different fashion. And I'm someone who doesn't like to read a lot of email because I find it to be pretty tedious. And you kind of open up an email and you don't really know what you're going to get, versus a text. It's just all right there and so much easier to kind of digest. And with an email, you feel like to respond, you have to put together a very formal response and make sure the spelling's accurate and all this stuff. So it's a little more tedious. But so I thought this was just kind of a redressed email, and I said, I'm already inundated with email. I don't need another email inbox that's trying to act like something different. And so I was very resistant to it. And I was head of medical affairs at that time, and I pretty much told my team, like, we're not going to use this. Some of the team members pushed back, and eventually I caved in and we started using it, and I bought into it very, very, very quickly, just because it's very easy to use. It allows you to organize conversations in a very simple manner. And we'll get into some of those basic features right away here. Yeah, it's nice because it's asynchronous communication, like messaging is on your phone, but it's not formal, and it's quick and efficient, and you can categorize things and sort things very, very easily. So let's get through some of this intro course stuff here. So I just logged in for the very first time, and it's going to go through this little training demo really quick, but I'm going to basically do that for you. So one of the first things that we're going to look at is channels. So I'm going to X out of this. And so if you'll notice here on the left sidebar menu, and the whole structure of Slack, there's a lot going on here. It looks like a lot going on, but you'll discover pretty quickly that it's really just this left sidebar menu that's important. And I'm going to make this a little bit taller. And so I'm going to X out of this stuff too, and now marketing. Okay, so you'll see there's huddles, channels, direct messages, which they call DMs. And that's really basically it. So let me start with something that's probably like the easiest thing to understand for someone who's like really just getting started with this. DMs or direct messages are really the thing that's most similar to just texting somebody. Okay. So you can see, I think Olivia's on. Yeah, so Olivia's on. So you'll start to see a list of your coworkers populate over here. And it's smart. So it picks up on who you tend to communicate with more frequently. And it'll start to organize your list based on people that you tend to communicate more frequently with. And you can also, if your company allows it, you can add coworkers to your list here. But let's go and see what Olivia said. So she was the one who initially invited us. So it's going to pull up on the right side a message board for my communications with Olivia. I would just recommend ignoring a lot of what happens up on this top bar because it's going to try to suggest things for you and try to auto get you to do things that you probably don't really need to do when you're just trying to message somebody at the beginning. So there's always a little like introductory little slide here that says like, this is Olivia and you're now starting your conversation with Olivia and it's just between you and Olivia. And you can view Olivia's profile if you want to, which seems like you can probably guess what that's going to show. But you can actually build out your own profile too. And I actually recommend doing that because when you do build out your own profile, you get to do things like putting in a photo, which if it's just a small company, a few people, it doesn't really matter much. But I think more and more as the company gets larger, if you're someone like me who's very visual, it's just much more orienting to see a photo of somebody than just their name. And or if you're supposed to meet with that person next week and you don't, and your office is huge, let's say there's 500 people in your office, and you're meeting with the new member of the legal team or something, it's really nice to have an image of their face before you meet them. So I think that Slack is good for that. Again, where email maybe has dropped off a little bit in the times, there's not so much personalization. So you can also set a status, and I'm just going to click on this quickly. Yeah. So you can set a status. This is, I'm trying to think what this is similar to. Really, maybe nothing quite similar to it on your phone, but this is pretty common to use these status markers in the office. I guess office culture might be different at different locations of wherever you're working, but for example, this is one that I see used a lot where someone maybe doesn't work in the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they only come in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They'll go ahead and mark just by clicking on that, that today they're working at the office. You can actually set time bounds on it. And you can even do things like if you're on vacation, for example, you could say, you want to pause your communications. I know you can do that with email too. I'm going to keep trying to draw parallels between this and email, but let's say you're vacationing and, it's this today, whatever. Remove the status after today. So when you sit vacationing, it'll automatically turn off notifications, and you can override that if you want. I don't want to get too deep into some of this, but this is just part of the profile setup. I think it's important. I would say with any new platform that you find yourself on, take the extra 15 minutes right away to just set up your profile because it's something that you'll notice when people do it. You'll appreciate that they've done it, and you want them to feel that same in reciprocation to you versus people that don't do it. And then it's just it's slightly it takes a little bit away from the intimacy of working remotely. If everybody looks like a green blob, it starts to feel a little impersonal. So like at the end of the day, you're like, wow, I interacted with 6 green blobs today. But if it's a person's friendly face, I think that makes a big difference over time, especially in a large place, a large workplace where you can, even if you're in the office and not remote, you can feel kind of lonely as more and more people are using things like communication like this versus walking over to your desk. That was one of the things that I really didn't like initially about adopting Slack in the workplace. I said, we got Google Chat, we got messaging, we got Zoom, we got Slack. I said, I want to use mouth chat. What's wrong with mouth chat? Just come over to my desk and let's talk with our mouths, So that was my kind of initial bias on that, and then I kind of got over it. But I think um, the reason I, I didn't like it was that it started to make it feel kind of impersonal. So things like building out your profile, that's just why I'm leaning on that. I'll get off my soapbox for that. But so when you go to a DM looks like this. A DM can be this is where it gets a little tricky. A DM, a direct message, can be with one person or multiple people. In this case, it's just one person. And so it's going to feel very similar to any other chat interface that you've worked with. So we can say, hi, I just joined and am excited to get going. Okay, other thing is that you can use, there's little shortcuts that you can pick up on. Like if you want to use an emoji, you can use the colon and then let's for example, instead of smiley face and hit space, it's going to put smiley face in. This is like the non-essential version of the Slack tutoring, but you could say sun and it'll pull that up and you can kind of toggle through and pick what you want. So and then there's formatting, which they've come a long way. Originally they didn't have, so there's lots of formatting you can do, including putting hyperlinks in. You could, if you wanted to say, you can just select text and put a hyperlink in there. I know that a lot of this feels intuitive, but sometimes it's just nice to know what the capabilities are. Sometimes you might be using a platform like Slack, and then 6 months later, you're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that because they just put that in 4 months ago and I didn't even notice. But there's a whole bunch of formatting tips you can use. When you put a link in, it usually puts a thumbnail of what you're linking to, and you can remove that if you don't want that to clutter up the conversation. There's formatting with the text, emojis. Another important thing to remember is you can use the @ symbol. So let's say you wanted to make sure that Olivia saw this, you could say you can type it out or you can start typing it or just select from the dropdown Olivia, and then it'll highlight that. And then you could say Olivia, would you like to grab coffee? Sorry, my typing is like horrendous. Now you might say, why would I put an Olivia in a conversation where I'm communicating already with Olivia? And depending on how things are set up, she may not get a notification that your message came through. It might just pop up on her screen as a little number over here, like a 1, but by her name. And that might be a silent, kind of a silent form of communicating with her. As soon as I put @Olivia here, like so, it's going to not only put a little 1 next to here, but it's also going to notify her. Probably, depending on her setup, if she's at work and connected to her monitor and things like that, it's going to have a little tray, like a little tray thing that comes in from the side that says like, you just got a Slack from Jeff. And it might even say what the message is. And then she can click on that and open up Slack. So you just got to be aware that when you're adding somebody like this, @Olivia, when you're adding somebody, it's likely going to send them a notification in addition to just showing up on their sidebar. So when we're happy with the message there, we'll go ahead and hit send. And then now you can see it's keeping a record of this. And it's like, oh, shoot, you know what? I totally forgot to say something. I can go back and I can edit the message. So it's really important to remember that you can do editing even after a message has been sent. And when it does that, they may have already read it, but you can still edit it. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So, okay, we got this down here. I'm sorry, we didn't want to get coffee. We wanted to get ice cream. Because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, and then so we're going to say ice cream. So now it's changed and it says edited here. So that's kind of like really basic Slack messaging. Hopefully she'll write back. If she doesn't, it's okay. Another thing we can do is we have another member here named Jeffrey. One thing we can do is we can start a new message. Excuse me, lots of talking all day. Sorry. Water going down the wrong pipe. Okay. So one thing we can do is we can start a new message. Good Lord. Sorry, folks. Okay. Let's say we want to communicate with both Olivia and Jeffrey. We can do that. So similar to the way you can populate a message, an iMessage on your phone, you can start, you could put one person's name in, another person's name. You could add as many people as you want onto this thread, onto this particular message or this thread. And when you do that, it's going to do, so now we're going to say same thing like, hi, let's grab ice cream later. Now, again, you can use the ads. I'm showing you this group thread just to show you a little nuance here, which is that let's say I did this. Here's a little pop quiz. Okay, if I sent this message to both of these people, the gray blob and the green blob, and I just said at Olivia here, who's going to get the notification? Well, they're both, so, and I'm going to answer for you. So they're both going to get notified in their little sidebars like this with the little +1 here. But only Olivia is going to get the notification sent to her. So if she's on her phone, she'll see a little notification pop up on the phone or on her monitor. But Jeffrey won't. Okay. If I wanted Jeffrey to also get the notification, I could do something like this. Or, and this is kind of like verging into sort of like intermediate Slack use, I could do something like this. So here's a little trick that I'll show you that I'm sure some of you already know. But let's say I wanted to immediately notify everybody. If you do at here, this is just their kind of goofy way of doing it. If you say at here, then watch, something's going to happen when I do this. It will notify everyone with a notification. And usually when you do that, it makes you, oh, I didn't do it. So normally, oftentimes when you say at here, especially if it's a large group, a big rooster will show up on the screen. I'm not lying. A big rooster will show up on the screen saying, are you sure you want to notify everyone on the team? So like, let's say you were blasting an entire department and you said at here, it'll just double check, double confirm that you really, really wanted to send that notification out to everybody on that team. So if I do this way, it's going to notify everyone at here. Let's grab ice cream. So Olivia and Jeffrey both got notifications because I just did that. Okay, so DMs, that's pretty much the 101 of DMs. You could turn a DM into a huddle, which we're not going to do right now, but because I would need somebody on the other end to do it with. But let's say I was like, we've been chatting back and forth for like the last 10 minutes about this one thing. Let's just jump on a call really quick and just hash it out, because I just need to know if we're going with green or blue, and you guys can't figure it out over this chat. No one's making any sense. So let's just jump on a quick call to figure that out. And I can offer to have a huddle, and it'll create a video chat from this group that I'm talking with right now, just so we can figure something out. Because sometimes just texting just won't solve it. I'm sure this happens in our personal lives too, where you text back and forth and there's miscommunication and this and that, and sometimes you just need to talk through it to get over. That's what you can use a huddle for. But I want to make sure we have time to get into channels. So Olivia's already done us the favor of creating some channels. It automatically comes with, I think, this all access channel. Everything you see with a hashtag in front of it is a channel. And so what I can do if I no longer want to be direct messaging somebody, I can actually start communicating with a channel, and a channel is going to be a whole group of people. It could be a small group, it could be a large group, but nonetheless, it's a group of people who have either been assigned to this channel or have opted into being viewers or members of that channel, and or have been, basically either they've opted in or they've been assigned to be members of that channel. And you can even have channels listed here that you're not necessarily a member of, but you want to just click into occasionally and see what's going on. But that's kind of not the basics. The basic is like, okay, so the Department of Cardiology has a channel that Olivia set up, and there's already a message there. And so I want to see what that message is, because I'm part of this cardiology group, I think, because somebody added me. So I can look up here and say, okay, I am a member of this channel, even though I didn't set it up that way. Somebody put me in there because they thought so. Like, this is not uncommon. That like your manager or your boss or your department head will just assign you to a channel because they want you to stay in the know about things that are cardiology related. So just know that you could end up in a channel like this, and when you are, you'll get depending on how you set up your notifications, you'll either see things on the sidebar or be notified in other means, in other ways. So now here, okay, wow, we're kind of joining this a little bit late. Normally at the top of this cardiology channel, there's usually a description to kind of explain what it is, especially for the more esoteric channels that you might be might belong to. There's usually a description at the top, and I guess it just hasn't been added yet. But it usually say like what the purpose of the channel is for. This is a channel for discussing the new chairperson search or something, right? And so that channel might be defined that way because it might be called Department of Cardiology Chairperson Search or something. So there's usually a record of who's joined and all that. Okay, this is an example of what I think some of us have already seen and are familiar with in the chat for Zoom. For example, you can reply to a certain comment. So Olivia said, "Hi, everyone." And then there's a couple of replies under that. And when you click on that, you're going to get taken to another side panel where you can see responses specific to this comment here. And she's just saying hi, so it's not really that specific. But if I wanted to reply within this comment thread, then I could do so over here. And you'll see what will happen is that it'll go to say 3 replies here. So I'll just say, so a couple of things to note here on a comment. You can either comment and have it just alert the person who put that one initial comment in, or you can have it go to notify the entire group. So you might be in a conversation with like 10 people in a channel, but you're really kind of mostly only having a conversation with 1 or 2 of those people. Or you might really only want to reply to a comment that was posted by one person, such as this, and then you wouldn't select this, sending it to the whole thing, because it's not relevant. If it's not relevant to everybody in the channel, then you shouldn't select that button. So we're just saying hello to Olivia, so it's not really relevant to everybody else in the channel. So that'll go there, and then this goes to 3 replies, and then you see as the red monster here, we show up here because that's us. But you can see how, again, if there's faces here, you'll start to see all the faces line up about who's really interested in this element of the conversation. So that's replying to something that already existed. If we've an important thing to remember about Slack at a very basic level is, do you see how when I'm hovering over different lines of text, it's kind of clustering it in this sort of little shadow that's behind the text? The reason it's doing that is that that's an entry. Like that is a chat, that is a comment or whatever you want to call it. That is a group of text that was entered all at one time and somebody pushed enter after it. Anytime that happens, I could go to any one of those and I could say, I want to comment on that thing. So here I'm hovering over the hi, everyone. I hope you had a good weekend. And I can reply to that specifically. Or I could go up here to the hi, let's see, I go to this hello, for example, and just reply to that hello specifically. So it's just good to know where the breaking points are in terms of replying. And so sometimes you have to be careful about what you might think you're replying to one thing, but you're actually like below it and you're replying to the wrong thing. This can happen with reactions too. I'll talk about that in just a second. But hi, everyone, had a great weekend. Okay, let's reply to that. It's going to load up the right sidebar like we were talking about. And then I can put my reply to that. It's basically a comment to that comment or a reply, depending on how you want to phrase it. You do that. And again, you can do it to the whole department or not. And I think you can even do an @ here too, if you put your fingers in the right place. Let's see what happens if I do that. Might get the rooster. I'm trying to get the rooster to shut up. No, either way. Okay. Anyway, so you can see how I replied just to that one thread. So you can see how it can get pretty deep with like comments on comments and in a channel. A channel can get kind of confusing, but let me just break it down for you this way. And you might say like, well, there's only 3 people in this channel, so why didn't you just make it a DM? Well, DMs are great for like one-on-one or maybe one-on-2 conversations. But as soon as you have like more than 3, and I even think 2 at some points, people in a thread, what you'll see over here where my cursor is over here, you see it says Jeffrey, Olivia, and then there's like almost no space here left over. Like you might be able to fit one more name in there, but as soon as one more name goes in there, you just lose the rest of them. And so it might be like Jeff, John, Joanne, Jamie, and then all you're seeing is Jeffrey and Olivia over here. So you might have also another conversation with Jeff, Olivia, John, Bob, and William, but all you see is Jeff and Olivia at the beginning, and you can't differentiate between which is the right Jeffrey and Olivia plus blah, blah, blah that I want to select. So that's where direct messages falls apart when you have more than probably 2 people in it. So I strongly recommend that if you have ongoing conversations with a group of people that are more than just like 2 people, that you create a channel for that group. So what we're going to do is say, let's create a new channel for the Jeffrey, Olivia, Bob, William, blah, 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 blah. It's making me kind of like, you don't need to have a template. We're not really going to get into that, but you can just pick a blank template. You've got to name the channel. This is just kind of fun fact. You can't put spaces or capitals when you're naming a channel. That's why they all look this way. So you could say, you could say my channel. It's gonna. I pushed a space bar there and automatically put the hyphen in. It's just not a bug. It's the way they do it. Very engineering kind of way to type. It's all lowercase, no spaces. You can create this, and then you're just gonna let you add people. And we're gonna add all 3 members. And we just got a few minutes left, so I want to show you a couple things. So here's my channel. We can add a description. This is all pretty obvious. This is my channel. And now it's way better. So I'll just show you really quick in comparison. Oh, it's not going to let me because there's only 3 people in the group. But if we had one more person, I'd show you. It gets really wonky when you look at this as a DM. But if you knew that my channel is the channel you always use to communicate with those 3 people, you would just do it here because you'd always remember, oh, that's in my channel. Oh, I want to talk to Jeffrey and Olivia, that's in my channel. Or I would have named this something better. I would have named it, the Jeff, Olivia, and Jeffrey show or something fun, right? So I'd always know that I could go there instead of trying to decipher all the names down here. We're going to wrap here in just a second, but I'll show you one more thing about channels just really quick. So within the channel, one more thing you need to know is that you can, where do I do this? You can lock the channel. And I'm not seeing where you can leave it. That's important to know. You can leave it. Sometimes you'll get part of these channels that are just archived from like 6 months ago, and you're like, why am I still getting notifications about this project I'm not involved in anymore? You can always leave a channel. There's a way to lock this, and maybe we had to do it when we set it up. Or maybe it's like right in front of my face and I'm totally not seeing it. But there's a way to lock it. And when you do it, you'll see a little padlock next here. And all that means is that it's a protected channel, that like no one from the company can just be like eavesdropping or like, dipping into your channel and sort of like reading what you're reading. So that's a way to have one more layer of security and privacy. So if you're talking about, because this will happen, you'll talk about things that are confidential or whatnot, and you want to know that you have that level of security. There's other things that when we get kind of more into the intermediate phases, you can structure the way you have these things ordered. You can do it based on like the frequency with which you use them. You can do like, you can manually sort them based on things like, oh, I want training is my #1 channel, so I want to have that on top. The other thing you can do is you could star it. So let's say this is like, you can favorite channels. Where was that? I don't know why I'm not like seeing all the goods. Maybe that was up here. Star the channel. Yeah. So it's one of my channels that I go to all the time, right? My channel. So I'm going to star it, and then that automatically brings it up on the menu, right? So it's like front and center all the time. So I think we have our other session starting, and I promised that we'd be done right at 3. But I hope this was. It's really hard for me to know who's like what level everyone's at. So people are probably sleeping through half this, I'd imagine. But if you've never seen this before and you're not kind of like really up to speed on kind of current intra-office, communications, then hopefully this was a way to kind of feel somewhat more relaxed about like what is Slack. And it's not some big mystery thing. It's actually very, very easy to use. But there's some things that just take a little bit of getting used to, just like anything. And soon enough, you'll kind of figure out where you can play with the more advanced features and things. But really, honestly, just that right there was covering the basics. So totally appreciate your all's attention. I'm sorry if you guys had questions that I didn't get to, but maybe at the session later tonight or at one of the breaks or something, we can talk about it if you have questions. But I really recommend you get in, dig into it, and have fun. Okay, thank you so much.